The sun sank low, casting its last, lingering golden glow across the tranquil settlement of Kumasi-Izen. It was an evening steeped in a profound stillness, one of those moments when the world seemed to hold its breath, when the gentle breeze whispered ancient secrets through the rustling leaves of the trees, and the land itself felt expectant and patiently waiting. A young girl named Adwoa sat near a modest wooden dwelling positioned right on the very edge of the village. She possessed a distinct quality that set her apart from the other children in Kumasi-Izen, not merely in her quiet appearance, but in the very core of her being, in the way she carried herself. While the other children chased laughter and games through the dusty pathways, their joyful cries echoing in the air, Adwoa often found herself seated alone in the lengthening shade, her gaze fixed intently on the distant horizon, as if searching for something only she could see. Her mother had tragically departed from the world when Adwoa was a mere infant, leaving a void that time could not fully fill, and her father, a diligent and hard-working farmer, was too preoccupied with the demands of the land and the struggle for survival to give her the attention, comfort, or guidance she silently yearned for. Adwoa had thus learned, from a very young age, the harsh necessity of looking after herself. There was no one consistently present to shower her with unwavering affection, to spin enchanting tales for her before sleep, or to ensure she was properly nourished, both in body and spirit. Yet, despite these early hardships and the pervasive sense of solitude, an undeniable resilience resided deep within her. It was a quiet strength, a tenacity that distinguished her from her more carefree peers. This particular evening, as the sky deepened into hues of orange and purple, Adwoa was making her way along a narrow dirt lane that meandered towards the humble home of a woman who resided solitary at the village's furthest boundary, a woman known simply as Mama Ngozi. Mama Ngozi was an elder, so old that she could realistically be a grandmother to almost everyone in Kumasi-Izen. She inhabited a simple house constructed from mud bricks, a dwelling that seemed almost swallowed by the untamed, sprawling gardens that surrounded it. The villagers rarely spoke of her, and when they did, it was often in hushed tones, tinged with a mixture of respect and apprehension. Some considered her overly proud, keeping to herself and declining involvement in village affairs. Others murmured about her long years of reclusiveness, wondering what had driven her to such solitude. But for some inexplicable reason, a quiet yet persistent drawing, Adwoa felt undeniably drawn to her. She had first encountered Mama Ngozi just a few months prior when, having strayed too far from her father's cultivation land while exploring, she was caught unprepared in a sudden and violent downpour. Cold, famished, and slightly frightened, she had timidly tapped on Mama Ngozi's door, seeking nothing more than a brief refuge from the storm. The elderly woman, who possessed a deep-seated inability to ever turn anyone away, had not only provided her with warm sustenance, but also a cozy spot by the fire to rest and dry off. Since that chance encounter, Adwoa had begun visiting Mama Ngozi with increasing frequency, often bringing small provisions from her father's farm as a gesture of gratitude, assisting with minor tasks around the house or garden, and spending hours simply sitting with the old woman, often in a comfortable, companionable silence that needed no words. That evening, as she approached the small mud brick house, the air growing cooler, she observed Mama Ngozi seated outside on a low wooden stool, her countenance deeply etched by the passage of time, bearing the marks of countless seasons and experiences, yet her eyes, surprisingly, remained remarkably sharp and observant, missing nothing. The old woman looked up as Adwoa drew near, a subtle, almost imperceptible smile gracing the corners of her lips. There was, however, an unusual quality to the smile today, a hint of something concealed, as if it masked a hidden truth or anticipation. Adwoa paused before her, the rich scent of damp earth and evening blossoms in the air, and carefully set a cluster of ripe bananas at Mama Ngozi's feet. "I brought these from Father's farm," she stated, her young voice gentle and respectful, but carrying a note of underlying firmness. Mama Ngozi nodded slowly, accepting the simple offering with a deliberate, unhurried motion. "Thank you, child," she said, her voice soft like worn cloth. You possess a truly generous heart. Adwoa shifted her feet slightly on the dirt, unsure what words should appropriately follow the exchange. A quiet, burgeoning intuition deep within her suggested that this specific day was different from her previous visits, that this particular visit might mark a significant and perhaps transformative transition in their unspoken relationship. Mama Ngozi regarded her for a prolonged moment, her sharp eyes seeming to peer into Adwoa's very soul before she finally spoke, breaking the growing silence. "You are a fine girl, Adwoa," she began, her voice a soft murmur. "I see you care for others, extending kindness even when it is unsolicited. You remind me of someone I once knew, someone very dear to me." The words lingered in the air, a blend of genuine commendation and an intriguing enigma that piqued Adwoa's curiosity. Adwoa felt a slight unease settle upon her, sensing the unexpected weight of the occasion and the unspoken history the old woman carried. "Who did I remind you of?" she inquired softly, her voice barely a murmur against the evening quiet. Mama Ngozi's gaze seemed to penetrate her, searching for something profound and perhaps familiar within Adwoa's own spirit. She paused for a long beat, the breeze rustling the nearby leaves, before responding, her voice heavy with memory. "You remind me of my daughter," she said simply. She continued, her voice wavering slightly. "She was much like you, strong in her own way, independent in spirit, and full of a quiet vitality. But she departed from me a long, long time ago." A lengthy and poignant silence descended between them as the shadows stretched and deepened around the small house. For the first time in many weeks, perhaps months, Adwoa felt an emotion stir within her that she could not quite articulate or define. Perhaps it was a sense of profound sympathy for the old woman's loss, or maybe it was something deeper, a nascent connection forming. "Why don't you tell me about her?" Adwoa requested softly, impulsively seating herself beside the old woman on the low stool, drawn by an irresistible urge to understand. She yearned to learn more, to comprehend the depth of the bond the old woman seemed to feel for her, a connection that extended far beyond mere simple kindness and hospitality. Mama Ngozi hesitated, her gaze distant, as though the recollections were buried beneath layers of time and difficult to retrieve, shrouded in a haze of sorrow. But after a few moments of contemplation, she began to speak, her voice a soft, melodic murmur against the deepening quiet of the evening. "She was everything to me, Adwoa. Everything a mother could wish for." Mama Ngozi's voice wavered slightly again, trembling with held-back emotion, but she pressed on, a quiet determination settling on her features. "But life has a way of taking what we cherish most, what we hold dearest. And now, all I have left of her are fragmented memories. I believe, child, it is time for me to impart these memories to someone, to share the burden and the beauty of them. And I sense, deep within my soul, that you are the one meant to hear them." As night deepened around them and the first shy stars began to emerge above the village, twinkling in the vast expanse, Mama Ngozi continued to recount her narrative, a story woven from threads of affection, profound sorrow, and the unspoken, enduring connection between mothers and daughters. Adwoa listened intently, her young heart aching with a sympathy she hadn't expected to feel for this elderly woman she barely knew, yet who now seemed to share an inexplicable, almost fated, link with her. When Mama Ngozi finally fell silent, her eyes heavy with the weariness of age and the weight of her painful memories, Adwoa gently placed a tentative hand on her arm, offering quiet comfort without words. "I shall return tomorrow," Adwoa pledged softly, her voice filled with a sincere promise. "I will come and listen again. I wish to hear more of your story, of Ama's story." Mama Ngozi smiled again, that same veiled, secretive smile playing on her lips. "I shall be here, child," she replied, her voice weak but holding a hint of hidden knowledge. As Adwoa made her way back along the dirt path to her father's dwelling that evening, the stars now fully brilliant above her, her mind was a whirlwind of inquiries and nascent thoughts. There was an incompleteness to Mama Ngozi's account, a distinct sense that something vital remained unrevealed, held back either by pain or by intent. Little did Adwoa realize in that moment, this simple promise to listen, this quiet act of compassion, would initiate a transformative journey for her, one that would irrevocably alter not only the course of her own existence but also, in a profound and unexpected way, Mama Ngoai's final destiny. And in a sense, it would ultimately provide the long-awaited answer to a question that had lingered, unspoken and unresolved, in the air of Kumasi Izin for countless years. What exactly had Mama Ngozi been safeguarding all this time? What deep secret had she carried alone for so long? Morning arrived gently, ushered in by a soft breeze dancing playfully through the village, carrying with it the comforting fragrance of fresh earth after the rain and the quiet promise of a new day unfolding. Adwoa awoke early, her mind still occupied, perhaps even preoccupied, with the thoughts and fragmented feelings evoked by the previous evening's conversation. She had made a commitment to Mama Ngozi that she would return, a promise she felt compelled to uphold with sincere conviction. After a quick and solitary meal, she collected a small basket containing a few fresh eggs from her father's farm, a small token of her ongoing visits, and proceeded along the familiar dirt track that wound its way towards Mama Ngozi's house. The sun was already beginning its steady ascent into the clear sky, casting elongated shadows that stretched across the landscape as the village gradually stirred to life around her, its residents starting their daily routines. Adwoa's footsteps were light on the path, yet a strange, almost palpable heaviness resided in her chest, a quiet premonition that today would hold something distinct, something potentially momentous, perhaps even challenging. Upon reaching the old woman's dwelling, she found Mama Ngozi seated outside once more, her fragile form slightly bent, as if literally weighed down by the accumulated years and experiences of a long life. Her eyes, however, remained remarkably sharp and clear, and as she saw Adwoa approaching the house, a spark of recognition and perhaps something akin to relief ignited within them. My child, you have come as you promised," her voice said, weak and raspy with age, but warm with genuine welcome. She motioned for Adwoa to take a seat on the stool beside her, sharing the limited space. Adwoa smiled softly and placed the basket of eggs carefully on the ground near them. "I brought these from Father's farm," she said again, offering them with both hands as a sign of respect and giving. "I thought you might find them useful for breakfast or simply to have." Mama Ngozi accepted the eggs gratefully, her weathered hands trembling slightly, nodding her thanks. "You are exceptionally kind, Adwoa," she said, her voice trailing off softly. "You remind me so very much of my daughter." She appeared lost in deep thought for a long moment, her gaze fixed on some unseen point in the distance, before shaking her head gently as if rousing herself from a powerful dream or a vivid memory. "I did not have the opportunity to inquire yesterday, Mama Ngozi," Adwoa began, her curiosity having intensified and settled overnight, the question lingering persistently in her mind like a riddle with missing components. "But why did your daughter leave you?" She sat patiently beside the old woman, her eyes filled with genuine compassion and a burgeoning need to understand. "You speak of her with such profound affection, yet also with such deep, enduring sorrow. I wish to comprehend the full story, the depth of your pain." Mama Ngozi sighed deeply, the sound akin to the gentle rustling of leaves in the wind, a sound heavy with the weight of unspoken grief. She took a long pause before replying, her gaze distant, as though sifting through a lifetime of memories blurred and softened by the passage of time, searching for the right words. "It was many years ago now," she began, her voice soft and quiet, but carrying an underlying current of resolute strength, a mother's enduring love. "My daughter, her name was Alma, and she was truly everything to me. She was radiant, full of a vibrant vitality, and universally adored by everyone in the village. But one day, she encountered a man from another village, a stranger, one might say, someone outside our world." Mama Ngozi's hands tightened slightly in her lap as she spoke. "Initially, I harbored deep reservations about him. There was a quality in his eyes, something I could not quite trust, a subtle darkness. She paused, shaking her head slowly. But Amma was young, and she was deeply in love. And when a young woman is deeply in love, she does not always heed the cautions or the worries of the world, even from her own mother. Adwoa listened attentively, her young heart feeling burdened by each word, sensing the pain relived in the telling. She could clearly perceive the anguish etched on the old woman's countenance, the tremor in her hands as she spoke of her beloved Amma. They departed one night without informing anyone, without a word. Mama Ngozi continued, her voice breaking slightly, the emotion overwhelming her for a moment. They went far, far away from Kumasi Izan, and that, child, was the very last I ever saw of her. Tears welled in the old woman's eyes, tracing paths through the dust on her cheeks. I searched for years, questioning people, strangers in other villages, following any rumor, but I never located her again. I remain unaware, to this very day, of what truly transpired, where she went, or if she is even still living in this world. A prolonged and heavy silence settled between them, the only sound the gentle, mournful rustling of leaves in the breeze. Adwoa could feel the full weight of Mama Ngozi's words pressing down on her, the profound anguish of a mother who had lost her child without knowing the circumstances, without closure. It was a pain that burrowed deep into the spirit, gnawing relentlessly, refusing to relinquish its hold. "I am profoundly sorry, Mama Ngozi," Adwoa said quietly, her voice full of genuine empathy and sorrow. She reached out instinctively and took the old woman's hand gently in hers, offering silent comfort and connection. "I cannot fathom how devastating that must have been for you, to never know." Mama Ngozi squeezed her hand lightly, her grip surprisingly strong despite her frailty, a sorrowful smile forming faintly on her lips. "Thank you, my child. You bring me comfort just by being here, just by listening. But sometimes, Adwoa, when I look at you, I discern the same spirit, the same innate kindness that Amma possessed." There was something in Mama Ngozi's eyes then, something almost secretive and knowing, as if she withheld a deeper truth that she was not yet prepared to disclose fully. Adwoa perceived it, sensed the unspoken words hanging in the air, and for the first time, she felt a tremor of something significant, something mysterious, connecting them. "I believe," Mama Ngozi said after a contemplative pause, her gaze softening slightly, "that the world possesses a way, a subtle, unseen mechanism of uniting certain individuals, of bringing certain souls together for a purpose. I have observed you, Adwoa, over these past months, and I have witnessed the pure kindness residing within you, the very same kindness that Amma possessed in abundance. I believe, truly believe, she would have found you agreeable, a kindred spirit." Adwoa felt a pang in her chest at the mention of Amma's name again. She could not logically explain why, but something about it felt like a thread, thin but strong, weaving them together, as if destiny, or something beyond their control, had played a crucial role in this meeting. "But why do you recount the story to me now, Mama Ngozi?" Adwoa inquired, her voice soft but tinged with an urgent curiosity, a need to understand the timing. "What significance does it hold? I do not fully comprehend." Mama Ngozi's eyes seemed to soften even more as she regarded the young girl seated so patiently beside her. "I will explain in time, Adwoa," she said quietly, her voice promising future revelations. "But there is something else, something of crucial importance that I must first convey to you, something I have kept hidden for too long. Something that will irrevocably alter everything for you, for your understanding of this place and yourself." Adwoa leaned in instinctively, her heart now pounding with a mixture of apprehension and anticipation. Whatever Mama Ngozi was about to impart, she sensed it deep within her being, in her gut. It would be something that would shift her perception of the world, just as the old woman's quiet presence had already begun to do in subtle ways. Mama Ngozi's voice lowered further, almost to a whisper, as if she were confiding a deeply personal secret intended solely for Adwoa's ears, a burden finally shared. "I have lived a long and weary life, Adwoa, and soon, I sense, I shall depart from this world. from this village." Mama Ngozi's voice was fragile now. "But before I do, I wish to bestow something far more valuable than possessions upon you. I want you to make me a solemn pledge." Adwoa's heart raced in her chest, a frantic bird against her ribs. "What is it, Mama Ngozi?" "I will do anything you ask." The old woman's gaze hardened slightly then, becoming intensely focused, as though she were reaching a final, critical determination. "You must promise me this, child, and you must never break this promise. You must promise me that you will never relinquish the love and the profound kindness residing within your heart. That regardless of what hardships transpire, regardless of the darkness you may encounter, you will cling fiercely to that goodness and share it freely with the world around you. Promise me, Adwoa. Promise me this." "I promise, Mama Ngozi," Adwoa affirmed immediately, her voice steady despite her pounding heart, the words coming from a place deep within her soul. She did not yet fully grasp the complete meaning or the true weight of Mama Ngozi's words, but something deep within her conveyed that this promise held immense, perhaps even life-altering, significance. Mama Ngozi's eyes softened once more, and she smiled that same secretive smile again. "Excellent," she whispered, a hint of knowing satisfaction in her voice. "For one day, perhaps sooner than you think, you will comprehend, and when that day arrives, you will understand precisely what course of action you must take, what path you must follow." As the day drew to a close and the sun dipped even lower in the sky, casting long, deep shadows, Adwoa left Mama Ngozi's dwelling with a peculiar sense of anticipation swirling within her chest. She did not fully understand the meaning of the old woman's final words or the nature of the impending trial, but she knew, with absolute certainty, that she stood on the precipice of something momentous, something that would fundamentally change everything she had ever known or believed about her village and herself. Little did she know, the answer to the mystery, the truth Mama Ngozi had hinted at, would manifest sooner than she could possibly have anticipated. The days that followed that conversation felt heavier than usual, the air thick with unspoken possibilities and a sense of impending change. Adwoa could not shake the feeling that something significant was about to transpire, something extending far beyond the simple interactions and quiet afternoons she had shared with Mama Ngozi over the preceding months. Each time she returned to the old woman's dwelling, she could not help but search intently for clues, for hidden answers concealed in the deep lines etched upon Mama Ngozi's ancient face or in the quiet, deliberate manner of her speech. A mystery was undeniably developing between them, one that Adwoa could clearly sense but not yet fully decipher or articulate. One particular morning, as Adwoa was walking along the familiar path towards Mama Ngozi's house, a cold, sharp breeze swept unexpectedly through the village, carrying with it a distinct sense of impending change, almost a premonition. She could not articulate why, but this day felt different from all the others. The sky was overcast, a dull, uniform gray, as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath, mirroring her own apprehension. She accelerated her pace slightly, her heart fluttering with a mixture of nervous excitement and a vague sense of apprehension. When she arrived, she found Mama Ngozi seated outside, as was her custom, but there was something unsettling in her stillness, in the way she held herself. The old woman's frail hands rested motionless on her lap, and her gaze was distant, seemingly lost in some faraway realm of memory or thought. "Mama Ngozi," Adwoa called out gently, taking a cautious step closer, concerned by the old woman's unusual posture. "Are you well today?" The old woman's eyes slowly shifted towards her, and for a brief, fleeting moment, Adwoa perceived a flicker of something she had never witnessed before in those sharp eyes: fear. It vanished as swiftly as it appeared, replaced by her customary calm and composure, but its brief appearance deeply unsettled Adwoa. "I am well, my child," Mama Ngozi said, her voice weak and thin, but steady with underlying purpose. "But I have been contemplating deeply. There is something, Adwoa, that I must reveal to you now. Something of critical importance that I ought to have disclosed much earlier." Adwoa sat down beside her instantly, her heart quickening in anticipation. She could sense, with undeniable certainty, that the moment for the old woman's long-held secrets was finally drawing near. She needed to hear this, needed to understand what Mama Ngozi had been attempting to convey, what burden she had been carrying all along. "What is it, Mama Ngozi?" Adwoa pressed gently, her voice low. "What is it you have been withholding from me?" Mama Ngozi paused again, her gaze drifting towards the distant horizon as if drawing strength from the ancient earth beneath her or the sky above. "You have heard my account of Amma, have you not?" Mama Ngozi began, her voice regaining a measure of strength. Adwoa nodded eagerly, desperate for illumination, for the missing pieces to the puzzle. "Yes," Adwoa replied. "You told me she departed with a man, and you never saw her again. But why do you continue to speak of her so often? I feel there is more to her story, more to it than just love. I feel you wish me to understand something deeper." The old woman's eyes darkened perceptibly then, and for the first time, Adwoa noticed a hint of profound remorse and regret in her expression. "Amma did not leave solely because she was in love, my child," Mama Ngozi explained, her voice heavy with past pain. "No, there was much more to it than that. There was a specific, urgent reason she fled so suddenly, so completely. A reason that has tormented me without end throughout all these years." Adwoa leaned in closer, her breath catching in her throat, sensing the impending revelation. "What reason, Mama Ngozi? What truly happened to her?" Mama Ngozi took a long, trembling breath, the sound shaky and fragile, and then, with a slow, deliberate movement, she reached into the folds of her worn wrapper, drawing out a small, leather-bound book. It was old, its pages yellowed and brittle with age, its cover frayed and softened, as if it had been handled countless times over the years, a cherished and guarded object. "This is Amma's journal," Mama Ngozi said, her voice barely above a whisper, filled with emotion. "I kept it after she departed, after she vanished. I did not wish to lose any single part of her, anything that remained. I thought perhaps one day I might find her again and return it, but now I realize it is no longer about finding her in this life. It is about understanding why she left, understanding what truly occurred, what forced her away." With trembling, unsteady hands, she carefully opened the journal to a page near the back where the ink had begun to fade and blur slightly, and extended it towards Adwoa. "I want you to read this, Adwoa," Mama Ngozi said, her voice urgent, tinged with desperation. "Because I believe you might be the only one who can truly comprehend its meaning, who can piece together the truth." Adwoa accepted the journal with the utmost care, feeling the significant weight of the old woman's words and the object itself. She opened the specified page, her eyes scanning the delicate, faded script written by Amma's hand so many years ago. The words were a stark, raw outpouring of fear. "I am not who I once was," she had written. "I have been concealing myself from something, from someone, for far too long, and now I cannot evade it any longer. The man I am with, the one I thought I loved, is not what he appears to be. He is involved in something darker, something terrible, something I cannot even fully articulate or comprehend. I fear for my life, for my mother's life, for everyone around me who might be connected to me. I no longer know whom to trust, whom to turn to. I have made a resolution. I will flee. I will go far away, somewhere no one connected to him can locate me." The entry ended with a heartbreaking uncertainty. "I do not know if I shall ever return, if I shall ever see my mother or my home again, but it is the sole means of survival left to me." Adwoa's eyes widened dramatically as she read the words, each sentence a heavy weight pressing down on her chest, taking her breath away. She looked up at Mama Ngozi, her voice barely a whisper, filled with shock and confusion. What does this signify, Mama Ngozi? Whom was Amma escaping from? What was she concealing that was so terrible?" Mama Ngozi closed her eyes for a moment, her face filled with profound sorrow and regret. "She was fleeing from a man, Adwoa," she explained, her voice heavy with the past. "A man who was part of a faction within the village itself. A group involved in matters no one outside of them should ever be privy to, matters of power and control. She shook her head slowly. But she did not confide everything in me, Adwoa. She could not bring herself to. She was too terrified of the repercussions of putting me in danger. Adwoa's mind raced, the puzzle pieces, however fragmented, beginning to align in a terrifying new picture. But why did you not pursue her, Mom Ngozi? Why did you not endeavor to find her and help her? I tried, Mom Ngozi said, her voice breaking completely this time, the raw pain evident. I searched for years, followed every lead, but each time I drew near, I felt a darkness, a palpable sense of danger enveloping me. I could not shield her, Adwoa. I could not shield her from the very force that was pulling her away from the danger she was fleeing. And I could not safeguard myself either if I pushed too hard. I had to let her go, let her flee for her life. But I never ceased searching for her in my heart. Never ceased hoping, praying she would return safely one day. A prolonged and weighty silence ensued between them as the full gravity of the revelation hung heavy in the air. Adwoa could not fully grasp it all, the complex layers of fear and sacrifice, but she felt something deep within her, a powerful pull towards this narrative, a connection that transcended the superficial. There was a reason, she knew now, that she had crossed paths with Mom Ngozi, a reason she had become so unexpectedly intertwined with this woman's life and her tragic past. What should I do with this, Mom Ngozi? Adwoa inquired, holding the journal tightly in her hands, its fragile weight suddenly feeling immense. Keep it, Mom Ngozi said, her voice regaining a measure of steady purpose despite the emotions visibly affecting her. Keep it safe. And when the opportune moment arrives, when the time is right, you will comprehend its true significance. There is more to this account, Adwoa, much more than I have shared, but it is not for me, an old woman whose time is near, to disclose. It is for you to uncover. You are the one who will rectify matters, who will bring closure. You are the one who will discover the remaining truth, the missing pieces. Adwoa nodded slowly, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and newfound purpose in her chest. She did not know how or when, but she knew now that her life was inexplicably entangled with this secret, this long-held mystery. The path ahead was indistinct, shrouded in uncertainty, but she could no longer retreat. Not now, not after hearing Amma's desperate words and Mom Ngozi's sorrow. As evening approached again, and the first scattered stars appeared in the darkening sky, Mom Ngozi's voice softened once more, becoming warm and filled with a profound depth of feeling. "Thank you, Adwoa," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You are the daughter I never truly had, the one I waited for. You are the one who will perpetuate the legacy of affection and courage that should have been Amma's. Never forget the kindness you possess." Adwoa slowly rose, the weight of the journal feeling like a physical burden in her hands, and made a silent vow, a solemn promise to the old woman whose life was fading. She would find the truth, she vowed silently. She would unveil the secrets of the past, regardless of where it led her or the personal cost. Little did she know, the truth was nearer than she could have ever conceived. The days following that momentous conversation felt burdensome, as if the very air in the village had thickened, heavy with unspoken realities and secrets. Adwoa found herself restless, constantly revisiting the old woman's words, the journal now carefully and safely concealed in her own modest dwelling. It was a secret, yes, but not just any secret. It was a key, she instinctively felt, a key to something far vaster and more complex than she could have possibly conceived. She continued her visits to Mom Ngozi, though the old woman's health seemed to deteriorate noticeably with each passing day. The once steady radiance in her sharp eyes was now veiled by a profound and encroaching fatigue. But each time Adwoa sat patiently by her side, the old woman would reach out and take her hand, her grip surprisingly stronger than her frail physique suggested, a silent reassurance. An unspoken bond now existed between them, something that had deepened far beyond mere shared narratives and quiet, companionable afternoons. It was as if Mama Ngozi was subtly preparing Adwoa for something she was not yet fully equipped to understand, something only the passage of time and perhaps further revelations could unveil. One afternoon, as the sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm, golden-orange light across the familiar rooftops and pathways of the village, Adwoa found herself walking along the well-worn dirt road towards Mama Ngozi's house once more. She held the journal loosely in her hand, the worn leather and creased pages a tangible link to the past, a result of the countless times she had painstakingly examined them, searching for hidden meaning. There were still so many unanswered questions, so many things she desperately needed to know to piece it all together. When she arrived, Mama Ngozi was not seated outside as was customary, enjoying the evening air. The door to her small house was open, but the old woman was absent from her usual spot. A sudden surge of panic shot through Adwoa's chest, and for a fleeting, terrifying moment, her mind raced through the direst possibilities. She gently pushed the door open further, calling out softly, her voice trembling slightly, "Mama Ngozi?" She stepped cautiously inside, her heart pounding with apprehension. The small room was dimly lit, the air thick with the scent of dried herbs, old wood, and something indefinably melancholic. Mama Ngozi's simple bed was undisturbed, and the entire house felt eerily still, holding its breath. "Mama Ngozi?" Adwoa called again, her voice louder now, tinged with fear, but there was no response, only the silence echoing back. As she turned, intending to search further, a faint sound drew her attention, a slight creak from the far corner of the room. She spun around instantly, her breath catching in her throat. There, seated by the small window, was Mama Ngozi. She was hunched over, her face pale and drawn, but her eyes were wide open, fixed intently on the journal which rested open in her lap. For a moment, Adwoa froze, uncertain whether to approach or what to do. The sight of Mama Ngozi in this state, so motionless and silent, was unlike anything she had ever witnessed before. It felt as though the very air in the room had shifted, becoming thick with anticipation and a palpable sense of foreboding. "Mama Ngozi," she whispered, taking a cautious step forward into the room. "What is it? Are you all right?" The old woman's voice cracked as she slowly looked up at her, her eyes filled with a deep, knowing sorrow. "Adwoa, my child," she said, her voice weak but clear. "I sense it now. Time is drawing to a close for me. I am too weak, too aged to accomplish what must be done, what I kept this for. But you—" She stopped abruptly, her hands trembling violently as they clutched the journal. "You must grasp the truth, child. You must know why Amma departed, and the full significance of it all. You are the sole individual capable of setting things right, of bringing it all to light." Adwoa stepped closer, her heart hammering against her ribs, a drumbeat of fear and determination. She could sense that the moment for the old woman's final, crucial secrets had arrived. She needed to hear this, needed to understand what Mama Ngozi had been attempting to convey and prepare her for all along. "What do you mean, Mama Ngozi? What happened to Amma? What is the ultimate outcome, the truth behind all of this?" The old woman closed her eyes for a moment, as if summoning the last vestiges of her strength and courage to continue speaking. "I knew she was in jeopardy, Adwoa," she began again, her voice stronger now, fueled by urgency, "but I did not comprehend the full depth of it, the true nature of the danger. The man she left with, the one from another village, he was not just a stranger. He was affiliated with a potent collective, a clandestine society that operates in the shadows of this very settlement, our Kumasi Izan." Mama Ngozi's voice was tinged with a bitterness Adwoa hadn't heard before. "They manipulate, they control, and at times, they obliterate those who come too near their secrets. I ought to have protected her more fiercely, but I was unable. I was too afraid for both of us." Adwoa's mind spun violently, her breath quickening with shock. "What clandestine society? Why did you not inform anyone about this, Mama Ngozi? Why did you not attempt to stop them?" Mama Ngozi's gaze was distant now, her voice hollowed by years of fear and silence. "Because they were ubiquitous, child. They were everywhere. They had eyes and ears observing everyone, including myself. I could not shield her from them, from the very force that was pulling her away into danger, and I could not safeguard myself either if I openly defied them. Alma believed escape was the only way to ensure her safety, to save her life. But she never truly eluded them. They invariably find their way back. They always maintain their control. Her words hung in the air like a storm gathering ominously on the horizon, heavy with unspoken threats. Adwoa's heart pounded in her ears, her thoughts racing frantically. This was of far greater magnitude than anything she had ever envisioned, far bigger than just Alma's tragic flight. Danger, real and pervasive, lurked within their midst, danger that had been concealed in plain sight for generations. The journal, Adwoa. Mama Ngozi's voice, though weak, pierced through Adwoa's racing thoughts. It contains the answers, the means to understand them, perhaps even to halt them, but it is incomplete. You must discover the missing fragments, the pieces of the puzzle. The truth is hidden within the narratives, in the individuals Alma encountered on her journey, and in the choices she ultimately made. You will need to piece it all together, but you must proceed with the utmost caution. Powerful forces are at play, child, and they will stop at nothing to preserve their secrets, to maintain their control. Adwoa nodded, her mind still reeling from the enormity of the revelation. I do not fully understand, Mama Ngozi. How do I locate the missing fragments? How do I even begin to confront them? Mama Ngozi's eyes softened again with a blend of profound sorrow and quiet admiration for the young girl's unexpected courage. You must pursue the indicators, child, she instructed, her voice firm despite her frailty. Trust in what you intuit in your heart, in that strong spirit you possess. Alma left behind a trail, a means for me, or for someone else, to eventually comprehend what truly transpired. I was unable to accomplish it myself. I was too afraid, too old. But you possess that capability. You must find the strength. Tears welled uncontrollably in Adwoa's eyes as she looked at the frail old woman whose strength and very presence appeared to be diminishing by the second. Mama Ngozi, I am unsure if I am prepared for this heavy burden. I do not know if I can manage it alone. The old woman smiled faintly, a ghost of a smile, her fragile hand reaching out with surprising tenderness to touch Adwoa's cheek. You are prepared, my child, she whispered, her voice barely audible now. You always have been, even without knowing it. Do not doubt yourself. Do not doubt the light within you. The fortitude within your spirit will illuminate the path, even in the deepest shadows. Before Adwoa could utter another word, before she could ask another question or express her gratitude, Mama Ngozi's breathing became shallower, slower, more hesitant. The journal, clutched moments before, slipped from her lap, falling to the ground with a gentle, almost silent thud. Her eyes closed softly, as if in peaceful slumber, and her head tilted gently to one side, as if the sheer weight of her words and the secrets she had finally released had claimed their ultimate toll. Adwoa knelt beside her instantly, her heart breaking in her chest as she comprehended, with a profound sense of sorrow, what had just occurred. Mama Ngozi, the woman who had unexpectedly taken her in when no one else would, the woman who had shared her deepest confidences and entrusted her with a dangerous truth, was gone. Tears streamed down Adwoa's face as she held the old woman's hand, now cool and still, silently pledging that she would honor the promise Mama Ngozi had made her swear to. She would uncover the full truth. She would piece together the missing fragments, regardless of the personal cost or the dangers she might face. With the journal, now a symbol of her promise and the heavy burden she carried, tightly clutched in her hands, Adwoa slowly rose to her feet, wiping the tears from her eyes with a determined hand. The sun was beginning to set outside, the sky darkening with the encroaching shadows of evening, mirroring the gravity of the situation. But within her, a new light had been kindled, a fierce resolve to uncover the truth, to confront the shadowy force that had tormented Mama Ngozi and driven Alma away, and to venerate the memory of the woman who had entrusted her with this perilous, life-altering secret. And so, her journey, the true, dangerous journey, commenced. The mystery was now solely her responsibility to unravel. The days following Mama Ngozi's passing were outwardly tranquil, yet pervaded by a heavy, unsettling stillness that hung like a shroud over the village of Kumasi Izin. News of the old woman's death circulated rapidly, and while many in the village lamented her absence, offering condolences and participating in quiet mourning, none truly comprehended the immense burden she had carried in solitude for so many years. No one was aware of the deep, dangerous secrets she had safeguarded, secrets that now resided solely within the fragile, worn journal clasped tightly, almost possessively, in Adwoa's hands. She spent the initial nights in the quiet solitude of her own dwelling, poring over the journal's cryptic entries, hoping desperately to find something, any thread, that would bring clarity to the convoluted tapestry of words, memories, and veiled fears. But the pages were frustratingly cryptic, replete with oblique references to individuals and locations she did not recognize, names that felt alien and unconnected to her world. Yet a dark thread interconnected them all, something somber and profoundly disquieting that caused her skin to prickle with a sense of unease with every reading. Amma, in her fear and desperation, had left behind indicators, fragmented pieces of a dangerous puzzle that Adwoa must now somehow solve alone. But the more she read, the more acutely she realized the terrifying magnitude of the danger concealed within those seemingly harmless pages. The words spoke not only of a man, but of a shadowy figure, someone who had been orchestrating events from the background, someone possessing the power to manipulate the lives and destinies of everyone around him. This was not solely about Amma and her flight. It was about something far more expansive, a pervasive, controlling force that reached deep into the very core of their village, shaping its reality in unseen ways. As the sun began its slow descent below the horizon on the 5th day after Mama Ngozi's death, painting the sky in bruised hues of gray and purple, Adwoa found herself standing at the village edge, the journal open in her hands, the pages feeling strangely warm from her touch. The air was thick with the tangible anticipation of rain, a storm brewing in the distance, and the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a sense of urgency, a feeling of being propelled forward. She had spent hours searching for answers within the journal's confines, but something crucial remained missing, just out of reach. A place, a name, a tangible connection. She turned the page, her fingers tracing the faded ink, until she encountered something that caused her heart to skip a beat, a name that leaped out at her with a chilling resonance. "There is a man," the entry read, "a man by the name of Kwame. He is the one I most dread, the one who terrifies me most." Amma had written, "I am unaware of his origin, where he came from, but I have observed the mark upon his arm, a symbol I recognize. It is an emblem of the collective, the one that governs everything here, that pulls the strings from the shadows. He is perilous, ruthless. He is perpetually vigilant, always watching. He is the very reason I was compelled to depart, to flee everything I knew. He will stop at nothing to keep his secrets concealed. He is the one who will inevitably discover me if I tarry too long in one place."
Kwame.
The name resonated deeply within Adwoa's chest, sending a shiver down her spine. She had heard it before, or perhaps whispers of it in the market, hushed exchanges among the village elders, even occasional mentions in passing conversation, but no one ever uttered his name openly, not in a way that suggested familiarity or ease. It was as though articulating his name aloud might somehow draw his unwelcome attention, might summon him. She closed the journal abruptly, her mind racing frantically. Kwame was not merely some anonymous stranger. He was intimately connected to the very heart of the darkness that had plagued Mama Ngozi and driven Amma to flee. And now, it seemed, he was inexplicably linked to her own destiny. Without further deliberation, driven by a sudden, urgent impulse, she tucked the journal safely into her satchel and proceeded, her steps quickening, towards the village center. The tension in the air seemed to intensify with each step, the oppressive weight of the brewing storm pressing down on her shoulders like a physical burden. She required answers. She needed to understand the truth, but she knew with stark clarity that she could not undertake this alone. She needed someone who understood the perils of this hidden world, someone who might be able to assist her in making sense of it all, someone from within the village itself. Adwoa found herself walking, almost unconsciously, towards the dwelling of Kwesi, a man who had been a close childhood companion of her late mother. Kwesi was a quiet, introspective man, widely renowned throughout the village for his sagacity, his deep knowledge of the village's history, and his thoughtful counsel. He was advanced in years now, his hair grayed and his movements slower, but still a figure of quiet reverence and respect among the populace. If anyone possessed information about a man like Kwame, about the undercurrents of power in the village, it would surely be him. When she reached his humble home, the air was heavy with a familiar aroma of wood smoke from the hearth and the distant, ominous sound of thunder rumbling on the horizon. Adwoa tapped softly on the wooden door, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and determination. She was uncertain if Kwesi would be willing or able to provide aid, but she felt a compelling urge, a necessity, to try. The door creaked open slowly, revealing Kwesi, his face marked by years of experience, wisdom, and perhaps a hidden burden. His eyes narrowed slightly upon seeing her standing on his doorstep, as though he had anticipated her visit for some time, had been waiting for this moment. "Adwoa," he said softly, his voice steady and calm, but undeniably tinged with an underlying apprehension that matched the stormy sky. "I wondered when you would arrive." She did not know how to respond to that unexpected statement, sensing a depth of understanding she hadn't anticipated. "I require your assistance, Kwesi," she stated simply, her voice steady despite the fear rising within her chest. "I need to know about a man named Kwame. I believe he is connected to what transpired with Mom Ngozi, with Amma, with everything that has been hidden." Kwesi did not immediately reply. He scrutinized her carefully, his wise eyes assessing her, as if weighing the implications of her words, before finally stepping aside to permit her entry into his home. She entered the small, dimly lit room, the air cool and slightly musty against her skin, a stark contrast to the humid evening outside. The walls were lined with shelves overflowing with old books, rolled scrolls tied with faded ribbon, and various ancient artifacts, relics of a bygone era, testaments to the village's long history. "Sit, Adwoa," Kwesi instructed gently, gesturing towards the woven mat on the floor near the hearth. He took a seat opposite her, folding his legs beneath him with practiced ease, his gaze steady. "Relate what you know, child." She produced the journal from her satchel, placing it carefully before him on the mat. "This belongs to Mom Ngozi," she explained, her voice low. "She entrusted it to me before she departed this world. I have been examining it, reading Amma's words, and I believe there is information within concerning Kwame. Something significant, something dangerous." Kwesi picked up the journal, his fingers carefully, almost reverently, tracing the worn edges of the cover. He did not appear surprised by its existence, but a profound sadness resided unmistakably in his eyes as he slowly leafed through the yellowed pages, recognizing perhaps the weight of the history contained within. "I was aware this day would eventually arrive," he murmured, more to himself than to Adwoa, his voice filled with a quiet resignation. "I had hoped, perhaps foolishly, it would not, but I knew, deep down, it would." He set the journal down gently between them and regarded Adwoa with a solemn, unwavering expression. "Kwame is no ordinary individual, Adwoa. He is a prominent figure, a leader, within a clandestine society that has existed in the shadows of this village for generations. They are the ones who truly govern this village from the darkness, manipulating affairs, ensuring that the prevailing order, their order, remains intact, undisturbed. They do not desire change, Adwoa. They do not wish the truth to be unveiled, not ever. Why has no one taken action against them?" Adwoa's voice was sharp now, filled with a rising tide of frustration and righteous indignation. "Why have the elders not intervened more forcefully? Why did Mom Ngozi not inform anyone who could have helped?" Kwesi's countenance hardened slightly, a shadow passing over his features. "Because they wield immense power, Adwoa. power that extends far beyond public perception or understanding. Kwame is dangerous, make no mistake, and the members of that society are equally so, perhaps even more so in their anonymity. No one dares to challenge them openly for fear of brutal retribution. They have eyes everywhere, watching, listening. Adwoa felt the full weight of his words settle over her like a heavy mantle, suffocating her hope. Then what am I supposed to do, Kwesi? What can I possibly accomplish against such pervasive, hidden power? Kwesi met her gaze directly, his eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow, caution, and a burgeoning respect for her unexpected courage. You must exercise the utmost caution, Adwoa. The truth you seek is perilous, like handling fire. But if you truly aspire to confront them, if you wish to uncover what truly transpired with Alma and Mamangozi, if you wish to bring this darkness to light, you'll have to delve deeper into their world. Discover the missing fragments they have hidden away. Unearth their most guarded secrets. But remember this, Adwoa, and remember it well. Once you commence this path, there is absolutely no possibility of retreat. They will pursue you relentlessly, and they will not relent until you are silenced, until you are no longer a threat. The storm outside intensified then, as if mirroring the turmoil within the room, the sound of thunder echoing through the small dwelling, shaking the very walls. For the first time in her life, Adwoa felt the full, terrifying gravity of the situation she had unwittingly entered. But there was no turning back now, no path of retreat left open. She nodded slowly, the determination within her heart hardening, becoming a steel resolve. I will undertake whatever is necessary, Kwesi, she stated, her voice unwavering despite the fear. I must ascertain the truth, for Mamangozi, for Alma, for this village. He regarded her with a long, serious look, his gaze lingering, before finally nodding in reluctant assent. Then be prepared, Adwoa, he said softly, his voice heavy with foreboding. The journey ahead will be arduous, perilous, and fraught with unseen dangers. And so, with the journal, now a symbol of her mission, clutched tightly in her hands and the storm raging outside, Adwoa knew one certainty, one undeniable truth. She was no longer merely a quiet girl from the village edge. She was inextricably involved in something far greater, something that would irrevocably alter her life and potentially the destiny of everyone around her in Kumasi Izan. The storm persisted throughout that night, a fierce tempest of wind and rain, but within the confines of Kwesi's humble dwelling, an eerie, unsettling silence seemed to press in on Adwoa, more suffocating than the noise. She had listened intently to his disclosures, absorbing the information, but now that the full gravity of her circumstances had fully registered, settling deep within her bones, the burden felt almost insufferable, too heavy to bear. She was uncertain if it was pure fear, the overwhelming sense of responsibility that had been thrust upon her, or something more profound, but she could not dispel the deep unease that gnawed relentlessly at her spirit. Kwesi had offered guidance, yes, a path forward, but there was so much more, she felt, that he had left unsaid, secrets still held close. The reality of the situation was far more intricate, far more dangerous than anyone had foreseen, perhaps even more than Kwesi himself truly grasped. She was a solitary girl, an orphan, standing at the very threshold of a significantly larger, darker realm, one she had been utterly unaware of until Mamangozi, in her final days, had illuminated it for her, handing her the key. And now, with her mentor gone, with Kwesi's unsettling warnings ringing in her ears, Adwoa was left holding the key to a riddle, a mystery, that threatened to dismantle everything she had ever known or believed about her home. The following morning, as the first hesitant light of dawn filtered through the crevices in the window shutters, casting long, gray shadows, Adwoa sat on the floor, surrounded by stacks of old papers she had found in the journal itself, and the fragmented narratives that Mamangozi had shared, now imbued with terrifying new meaning. She had dedicated the entire night to reading, to scrutinizing every word, endeavoring desperately to make sense of the segments of her life and her village's history she had never fully comprehended. The names mentioned, The references to long-forgotten individuals, the locations she did not recognize, they were all indicators, clues left behind by Alma. But one stood out above the rest, a name that resonated with a chilling clarity she couldn't ignore. The name Kwesi had appeared in the journal. Yes, but not in the manner she had anticipated. Not merely as a respected elder. Mama Ngozi had documented a time, decades ago, when the two had collaborated, had worked together in secret to expose a similar scheme, a previous manifestation of the society's power. But the specifics were maddeningly ambiguous, frustratingly vague. All she knew with certainty was that it constituted a significant portion of the village's hidden history, a period when, perhaps, the community had united, however briefly, against a common adversary, a time when Kwesi, the quiet elder, had been at the vanguard of that forgotten struggle. Adwoa gazed at the page for a prolonged period, the implications of the words sinking in with a chilling finality. Kwesi had been involved in something far more substantial, far more dangerous, than he had ever disclosed to her. He had possessed knowledge of the society, of Kwame, all along. He had been aware of far more than he was willing or able to articulate, perhaps even more than Mama Ngozi knew. With this newfound, unsettling understanding, she rose to her feet, a cold knot tightening in her stomach, and resolved that it was time to confront him directly. She required answers, she demanded them. Answers that could assist her in deciphering the complex mystery and, more significantly, help her understand why the village itself seemed so complicit in all of it, why the darkness had been allowed to take root and flourish. She had to ascertain who else was aware of Kwame and his collective, who else was part of the secret. As she stepped out into the crisp morning air, leaving the oppressive silence of her dwelling, she noticed the village was quieter than usual, eerily so. The customary hustle and bustle of children playing, their laughter filling the air, and people going about their daily affairs was strangely absent, supplanted by a heavy, almost oppressive stillness that felt unnatural. It felt as though the entire village was holding its breath, awaiting an event, sensing the shift in the air. Adwoa reached Kwesi's house once again, but this time there was no welcoming indication, no sign of life within. The door was closed and tightly shut, and no comforting smoke ascended from the chimney, a stark contrast to the previous evening. Her heart skipped a beat with a sudden surge of panic. Had something befallen him? Had they found out about her visit? She knocked on the door with urgency, the sound echoing hollowly, but received no response. She tried again, harder this time, calling out, "Kwesi, it is Adwoa. Please, I need to converse with you. It is important, life-altering." After a lengthy, tense interval, the door creaked open slowly. But it was not Kwesi who stood in the doorway. It was a woman Adwoa had never encountered before. A tall, slender figure, her face unreadable, with piercing, unnervingly sharp eyes that seemed to see directly through Adwoa, assessing her, evaluating her purpose. "Yes?" the woman inquired, her voice frigid and devoid of warmth, like ice. I am seeking Kwesi," Adwoa said, her voice trembling slightly despite her resolve, thrown off balance by the unexpected encounter. "I need to speak with him. It is important, critically important." The woman regarded her for a moment, her expression utterly inscrutable, then stepped aside silently, gesturing with a cool, deliberate movement for Adwoa to enter the house. The interior of the house was startlingly different from before, transformed. It was darker, quieter, and somehow more suffocating, stripping away the comfortable feeling it had held the previous night. There were no overflowing bookshelves, no ancient artifacts dispersed throughout the room. Instead, the walls were bare, the furnishings sparse and functional. Something about the ambience felt deeply amiss, as though the place was no longer a warm residence, but an empty shell, a facade. Adwoa stepped cautiously inside, her gaze darting nervously around the room, searching for any sign of Kwesi or something out of place. She could feel the woman's piercing eyes tracking her every movement, assessing her intentions. "Where is Kwesi?" Adwoa inquired again, her voice tight with apprehension, her heart pounding in her chest. The woman's lips curved into a slight smile, a chilling expression that held no warmth or kindness. "You will not find him here," she said softly, her voice dangerously calm. "He has departed. Departed to attend to some unresolved matters that required his immediate attention." The words struck Adwoa like a physical blow to the abdomen, stealing her breath. "What do you mean, departed?" she stammered, struggling to comprehend. "Where did he go? Why did he not inform me? Not tell me he was leaving?" The woman's smile vanished completely as she advanced slowly towards the door, her movements deliberate, controlled, menacing. "You should have been more discerning, more careful, than to place your trust so readily in him, child," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "He has been an integral part of this village's secret, of the society, for a protracted period, far longer than you even comprehend." Adwoa's mind reeled violently, struggling to process the information. "What do you mean?
What are you insinuating about him?"
Is he involved in what transpired with Mom and Gozi, with Amma?" The woman's eyes darkened, becoming cold and hard. "Kwesi is not merely a quiet old man, Adwoa. He was once one of their leaders, one of the very individuals who facilitated the society's ascent to power in the first place, who helped shape it. He was a participant in the design and the control, just like Kwame." The words sent a shockwave through Adwoa's entire being, leaving her feeling numb and disbelieving. She could not process them, could not reconcile this image with the kind, wise man she had spoken to just hours before. She refused, instinctively, to accept them. The man who had been her guide, who had shared stories with her, who had promised to assist her, had been a part of the very entity she was opposing, a part of the darkness. "No," Adwoa whispered, shaking her head vehemently, desperately attempting to deny the woman's words, to make sense of them. "That cannot be accurate. It is impossible. He has consistently aided me. He assisted Mom and Gozi. He gave me the journal." The woman's expression softened for the briefest instant, a flicker of something unreadable, though her eyes still retained an unsettling frigidity that unnerved Adwoa. "People change, child," she said quietly. "Or perhaps they merely reveal their true nature when the appropriate moment, the opportune time arrives." She turned towards the door, opening it slightly, as if signaling the abrupt conclusion of their conversation, a dismissal. "You will discover soon enough, Adwoa. The truth inevitably finds a way to surface, like water seeking its level. But be cautioned, child. Be very careful. The more you pursue, the more you will unveil, and there is always a price, a heavy cost, for excessive knowledge, for uncovering too much." Adwoa stood frozen in place, her mind racing, endeavoring desperately to piece together what had just been articulated, the fragments of a devastating betrayal. Kwesi, her supposed ally, had been a component of the very force she was now contending with. He had possessed knowledge of Kwame, known about the clandestine society, and had played a significant role in its dominance. But why then had he assisted her? Why had he helped Mom and Gozi in her final days? Was it all merely a calculated charade for him, a final manipulative act? As she turned to depart, the woman's voice arrested her, stopping her in her tracks. "Do not claim I failed to forewarn you, Adwoa," she said, her voice low and full of ominous warning. "The truth carries a cost, a heavy one, and those who pursue it relentlessly often do not return unchanged, if they return at all. Be cautious, Adwoa. Exceedingly cautious in your pursuits." Adwoa stepped back out into the daylight, the brightness feeling harsh and unwelcoming, her heart heavy with the crushing weight of betrayal, her mind swimming in disarray and confusion. She had arrived seeking clarification, hoping for answers, but now she possessed more inquiries, more doubts, than ever before. Kwesi was gone, vanished, and the struggle she believed she was prepared for had just become far more perilous, far more complicated than she had ever imagined. She could no longer place trust in the individuals she had once believed she could rely upon unconditionally. The village's secrets were deeper, more profound, more intertwined than she could have ever surmised, and now it was incumbent upon her, alone it seemed, to uncover them all, regardless of the consequence, regardless of the danger. Adwoa exited Kwesi's dwelling, the morning sunlight feeling harsh and unwelcoming, as if incapable of offering its usual solace or warmth. Her mind was a tempest of questions, doubts, and raw emotions swirling violently. The village now seemed alien to her, subtly transformed by the weight of the revelations. The familiar pathways she had once traversed with ease, feeling secure, now felt foreign, as if they were bordered by concealed hazards, by unseen traps, waiting to ensnare her at any moment. Her thoughts reverted incessantly to the woman in Kwesi's house, her cold eyes and chilling words. What exactly had she been conveying? Kwesi had assisted her. He had given her the journal, shared his insights, and even cautioned her about the society and its dangers. How could he possibly have been a part of it, a leader even? She could not reconcile the kind, wise man she had known with the cold, calculating figure the woman had portrayed, the architect of the village's hidden control. Was it conceivable that Kwesi had been playing both sides all along, a complex, long-term deception? She shook her head, attempting desperately to clear the turmoil of her thoughts. There was no time to dwell on hypotheticals or past betrayals, however painful. She had to press forward. She had to continue the search for the truth. If Kwesi had genuinely been a part of the clandestine society, then that indicated the threat was far more significant, far more deeply rooted than she had initially realized. Kwame and his adherents were not merely enigmatic figures lurking in the shadows. They were individuals occupying positions of authority, with connections that ran deep into the very fabric of the village, their influence concealed beneath a shroud of generations-old secrecy and fear. And she, Adwoa, a simple girl, now stood directly in their path, having inadvertently stumbled upon their hidden world. She knew with absolute certainty she could not desist now, not after Mama Ngozi's sacrifice, not after Amma's words in the journal. She had to reach the core of this matter. She had to learn what Kwesi had known, what Mama Ngozi had truly known before her death. She had to unveil the full truth about Kwame and his collective, no matter the cost, no matter the personal sacrifice. As she made her way back towards her own humble home, her steps quickening with a renewed sense of purpose, she began to consider her next course of action. She required more intelligence, more perspectives, and perhaps more individuals to confide in, to trust. But to whom could she possibly turn now, when trust itself felt like a fragile, broken thing? The elders? They were all bound by tradition, by apprehension, by a lifetime of navigating the village's unseen power structures. The villagers? Many were too fearful to speak out, too willing to comply with the tacit, unspoken control that Kwame and the society wielded. But then, an idea, a spark of hope, struck her, faint but persistent. There was one individual who might still possess knowledge, someone who had always been, in her own quiet way, by her side, a silent observer. Someone who had lived through the village's history, witnessing the subtle, gradual shifts in authority, the way things had always been done, or more accurately, the way they had always been controlled. Adwoa made her way, with a sense of increasing urgency, to the village edge, to the small, slightly dilapidated dwelling that belonged to her aunt, Nana Surwa. Nana Surwa had resided there for as long as Adwoa could possibly remember, a fixture in her life. She was older than her mother had been, her face a roadmap of a long life lived in hardship, marked by deep lines and wrinkles, yet a profound wisdom resided in her kind, observant eyes. Nana Surwa had always been a silent observer of village politics, of its hidden undercurrents, the type of person who listened far more than she spoke, absorbing everything. She had always seemed to possess a wealth of knowledge without ever divulging it openly. Adwoa tapped gently on the weathered wooden door, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and trepidation. It creaked open almost instantly, revealing Nana Surwa's familiar face in the doorway, her eyes, sharp and perceptive despite her age, fixed upon Adwoa. "Adwoa, child." Nana Surwa greeted her, a soft, knowing smile forming on her lips, a smile that hinted she understood more than Adwoa was prepared to say. "You have arrived at precisely the right moment, it seems." Adwoa felt a shiver run through her as the door swung wider, permitting her entry into the familiar, comforting space. "Aunt Nana," Adwoa began, her voice trembling slightly. "I need to speak with you, urgently. There is many things I must understand, things that are tearing the village apart." Nana Serwa gestured for her to be seated, offering her the place of honor. And as Adwoa lowered herself onto the low wooden bench, she could clearly discern the deep concern that had replaced the smile in her aunt's eyes. "What is it, my child?" Nana Serwa asked quietly, her voice gentle. "You appear troubled, deeply troubled." Adwoa hesitated for a long moment, her fingers unconsciously clutching the hem of her worn dress, searching for the right place to begin. "I am unsure where to commence, Aunt Nana," she began finally, the words spilling out in a rush. "But it concerns Kwesi. It concerns everything. I believe I know now that I have uncovered something that could fundamentally alter everything about this village, about our lives." Nana Serwa sat down opposite her, her hands folded calmly in her lap, a picture of composure that belied the potential gravity of Adwoa's statement. "Related to me, child," she said quietly, her voice steady and reassuring. So, with Nana Serwa's patient presence beside her, offering a sense of safety she hadn't felt in days, Adwoa recounted everything: Mama Ngozi's death, the journal, the dangerous secrets concealed within its pages, Kwesi's purported role in the society, the chilling encounter with the woman at his house, and the cryptic phrases that had led her, however uncertainly, to this very juncture. She held nothing back, sharing every single detail, every fear, every dawning realization she had unearthed. Nana Serwa listened intently, her face unreadable, revealing nothing of her own thoughts or knowledge as Adwoa spoke. When she finished, a prolonged, heavy silence stretched between them, punctuated only by the distant sound of village life continuing, seemingly oblivious. Adwoa awaited her aunt's response anxiously, her heart pounding, but Nana Serwa remained silent initially, her gaze distant. Then, after what seemed an eternity of waiting, she finally spoke, her voice low and resonant with the weight of years of hidden knowledge. "You have indeed uncovered a great deal, child," she said, her voice soft. "Far more, perhaps, than I had ever hoped you would in your young life." Adwoa frowned, a knot of apprehension tightening in her chest. "Aunt Nana," she said, her voice a whisper of accusation. "You were aware. You knew about this, didn't you?" Nana Serwa nodded slowly, a gesture of confirmation. "I was aware of more, Adwoa, far more than I ever disclosed to you or anyone else. This village, our home, has always harbored its secrets, its hidden truths, but there are some truths, some realities, one would never, ever wish to unveil, not to anyone, not ever. Truths that could shatter the very fabric of this community, that could tear it apart from within." "Then why did you not say anything?" Adwoa cried, her voice cracking with frustration and a sense of being left unprotected. "Why did you not caution me, warn me of the danger?" Nana Serwa sighed deeply, her eyes filled with a profound, ancient sorrow. "Because some truths, my dear, are too perilous to voice aloud. The society that governs this village, that controls it from the shadows, is ancient. Its roots run deep into the very soil of this place, and its influence is pervasive. To challenge it openly is to jeopardize everything, to risk not only your own life, but the lives of those you care for. People have attempted it before, Adwoa, and many have vanished without a trace, their stories erased." She paused, regarding Adwoa with intense seriousness. "Kwesi may have assisted you, he may have given you the journal, but you do not fully comprehend, child. He has been involved in this, in their world, for a very long time. He is not a man of pure intentions, not entirely." Adwoa felt a cold chill creep over her skin, a sense of dread washing over her. "But why would he assist me if he is part of it? Why would he help Mama Ngozi in her final days?" Nana Serwa's expression darkened further. "Because sometimes, Adwoa, the strongest among us, the most conflicted, are the ones closest to the precipice, closest to the edge of despair. Kwesi is conflicted, deeply so, child. He may have been part of their world, may have helped build it, but deep down, in his heart, he has always recognized the terrible price of their authority, the cost of their control. He assisted you, Adwoa, because he perceived the fundamental goodness within you, the light. Mom Ngozi, she was one of the few who truly resisted, who fought against the shadows in her own quiet, determined manner. But Kwesi never truly departed their world. He has always been torn, caught between his allegiance to the society he helped create and his yearning to do what is right, what is just. Adwoa felt as though the ground had completely shifted beneath her feet, leaving her reeling. She had assumed Kwesi was a steadfast ally, a beacon of wisdom, but now it appeared that the boundary between ally and adversary was far thinner, far more permeable than she had ever conceived. Then what course of action should I take now? She inquired, her voice small, uncertain, filled with the weight of her newfound isolation. How can I possibly stop them? How can I stop Kwame and his society? Nana Serwa rose slowly and walked to the small window, gazing out at the familiar village below, now viewed through the lens of hidden secrets and pervasive control. You must proceed with the utmost caution, Adwoa, with every step. To confront them is to challenge everything this village has ever embodied, everything it is built upon. But you must unearth the truth, all of it, and within that truth, the full, unvarnished truth, resides your true strength, your only weapon. Adwoa felt a quiet, burgeoning determination settle within her chest, hardening her resolve like freshly fired clay. She did not know how or when it would manifest, how she would fight, or even if she could truly succeed against such an ancient, powerful force. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would uncover the truth. She would expose the darkness concealing itself in her village, regardless of the repercussions, regardless of the danger to herself. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting elongated, distorted shadows over the earth, Adwoa felt the full, heavy weight of her forthcoming journey, the perilous path stretching out before her. The path was undeniably fraught with danger, and sacrifices, she knew instinctively, would be necessary. But she had already endured significant loss in her young life. Now she had nothing left to lose but the truth itself, and she would contend for it. She would fight for it, even if it meant walking the path alone against the pervasive shadows. The ensuing days felt like a hazy, dreamlike progression for Adwoa, each one passing with the burdensome weight of uncertainty pressing harder on her shoulders. She had acquired so much knowledge, so many fragments of truth, in such a brief span of time, but the pieces of the puzzle did not interlock seamlessly. They remained stubbornly disconnected. It was as though she stood in the center of a vast, darkened room, feeling her way around the edges, grasping at shapes, yet never quite reaching the elusive light switch that would illuminate the whole. Her discussions with Nana Serwa had become more frequent, providing some guidance, but even her aunt's profound wisdom, her deep understanding of the village's hidden history, could not entirely alleviate the heavy burden that weighed on Adwoa's heart, the sense of isolation she felt. The tranquil village she had known her entire life, the place she had called home, seemed to be contracting around her, its gentle, familiar rhythms disrupted by the shadows that appeared to deepen and lengthen with each passing day, obscuring the light. Adwoa spent lengthy hours poring over the journal, Amma's last words, attempting desperately to decipher its cryptic entries, to find the key that would unlock its deeper meaning. One entry, in particular, haunted her thoughts persistently. It spoke not just of flight, but of a final trial, a test of some kind that had been initiated long before her own birth, a test designed specifically to either shatter completely or profoundly fortify those who dared to challenge the society, those who sought to disrupt the established order. The words were agonizingly vague, filled with metaphor, but they felt undeniably ominous, directed at her. Was this trial intended for her specifically? And if so, what manner of test was it? What would it demand of her? But despite her confusion, her fear, and the immense uncertainty, an inner fortitude, a quiet, unyielding resolve, refused to yield. She had ventured too far into this hidden world to retreat now. The stakes were too high, the truth too important. She had to uncover the complete truth, not just for her own sake, but for Mama Ngozi's sake, to honor her memory, and for the sake of the village that had been kept in obscurity, controlled by hidden forces, for such a prolonged period. One evening, as the sun dipped low on the horizon once more, painting the sky in dramatic hues of purple and orange, a breathtaking, fiery display, Adwoa found herself walking down the familiar dirt road that led to the village edge, a path she had walked so many times before, now laden with new meaning. She had arrived at a decision, a terrifying one, but one she knew was necessary. It was time to speak with Kwame directly. The mere notion of confronting him, of standing face to face with the man Amma had so dreaded, filled her with a profound sense of dread, chilling her to the bone. But it represented, she knew, the sole path forward, the only way to uncover the ultimate truth. He was the acknowledged leader of the society, its public face, and if she harbored any hope of unraveling its intricate web of secrets, of understanding its purpose, she had to proceed directly to its perceived core. As she reached the village outskirts, where the trees began to crowd the path, Adwoa observed a figure standing tall and still by the ancient tree where she had often seen the elders congregate for quiet discussions, where the heart of the village's unspoken authority seemed to reside. Kwame stood there, his tall, imposing frame outlined starkly against the fading light of the sky. His presence was commanding, emanating an aura of power, and even from a distance, she could feel the weight of his authority, the unseen influence he wielded. Taking a deep, steadying breath, attempting to calm the frantic beating of her heart, Adwoa walked towards him, her steps steady and deliberate, but her heart racing wildly in her chest. She was unsure what to anticipate, whether he would be welcoming or cold, hostile or surprisingly understanding. But she knew, with absolute certainty, she could not falter now. When Kwame noticed her approach, his gaze fixed upon her, a smile tugged at the corners of his lips, but it was a smile that did not extend to his eyes, leaving them cool and distant. His gaze was piercing, almost unnervingly perceptive, as if he had been expecting her, waiting for this very moment. Adwoa, he said, his voice smooth and unhurried, carrying on the still air. I've been contemplating, wondering, when you would eventually arrive to seek me out. Adwoa halted a few paces from him, sensing the palpable tension in the air, the unspoken power dynamic between them. I require answers, Kwame, she stated, her voice unwavering, stronger than she expected, despite the turmoil swirling within her. I need to understand what is truly occurring in this village. Behind the facade. Who is behind everything, this control, and why? Why was Mama Ngozi tormented? Why did Amma have to flee? Kwame's smile deepened slightly, but a hint of something darker, something predatory, lurked beneath it, just visible at the edges. You have been posing the correct questions, Adwoa, he said, his voice laced with an unsettling calmness, a quiet authority. But perhaps not to the appropriate individuals, not the ones who truly hold the knowledge. He paused, allowing his words to sink in. There are matters in this world, Adwoa, matters in this village, that cannot be comprehended merely by observation, by looking on from the outside. You must feel them, experience them, perhaps even inhale them into your very being. Only then, when you are immersed, will you truly understand. Her frustration surged to the surface, breaking through her fear. I have no need for riddles or enigmas, Kwame, she retorted, her voice sharp with impatience. I require the truth, the full, unvarnished truth. I must know what truly transpired with Mama Ngozi, with Amma, what you and this society represent. The mention of Mama Ngozi's name caused a brief, almost imperceptible flicker of something in his eyes, a shadow of recognition perhaps, or annoyance, something she couldn't quite decipher before his expression reverted quickly to its usual cool, composed demeanor. Mama Ngozi was a part of this village's history, Adwoa, just like everyone else who has lived and died here, Kwame said, his words slow and deliberate, dismissive. She played her role in the narrative, in the unfolding of events. And now, it seems, It is your turn to play yours." "My turn?" Adwoa repeated, bewildered, completely thrown off balance by his statement. "What do you signify by that? What role am I expected to play?" Kwame took a step closer to her then, his imposing presence dominating the space between them, and for the first time, she felt the full, undeniable weight of his power, his controlled intensity. There was an unsettling quality to his composure, like a predator toying calmly with its unwitting quarry before the inevitable strike. "You are seeking something, Adwoa, a truth that has already been set in motion long ago," he said softly, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "This village, the society, the control, it has existed long before you and I were born, long before our ancestors walked this land. And it will persist long after we are gone, a cycle unbroken. Your quest for answers, your desire to expose the truth, it is all part of a grander design, a narrative. One that was inscribed, determined, long ago, before you even drew your first breath." Adwoa felt a deep chill run through her entire body, settling in her bones. She was no longer certain if this conversation was merely a twisted game to him, a manipulation, or if he was genuinely disclosing something far more dangerous, a terrifying reality she hadn't even considered. "You do not control this village, Kwame," she stated, attempting to steady her voice, to assert her own will. "And you do not control me. I am not afraid of you or your power." Kwame tilted his head slightly, his expression inscrutable, impossible to read. "No," he agreed softly, his voice acknowledging her claim. "Perhaps you are not fearful, not yet, but you will be. You will be when you comprehend the full meaning of all this, the true extent of the control. You will be when you realize that the very individuals you believed you could trust are the ones who will ultimately betray you, who have already betrayed you." Her heart skipped a beat, a sudden, cold dread gripping her. "What are you speaking of? What betrayal?" she demanded, her voice breaking slightly with desperation. Kwame took another deliberate step towards her, his eyes never leaving hers, his gaze intense and unsettling. "The truth, Adwoa, the deepest truth, is that everything you have known, everything you have believed about this village, is a falsehood, an illusion. Every word you have been told, every smile you've received, is part of a carefully constructed illusion to maintain the order. The society governs everything here, every decision, every resource, everything you perceive, everything you hear, everything you are allowed to know." He paused, the weight of his words pressing down on her, heavy and suffocating. "And soon, Adwoa, very soon, you will be compelled to make a choice, the ultimate choice, to accept the truth, to embrace the reality of our world and become one of us, part of the enduring order, or to oppose it, to fight against it and be crushed completely by its overwhelming might." The crushing weight of his words hung heavy and silent in the air between them, a palpable force. Adwoa stood there, frozen, her mind struggling desperately to process the sheer enormity of his statement. Could it possibly be true? Was the entire village, every person she had ever known, genuinely a part of this dark, hidden collective, living a lie? Kwame gave her one final look, his gaze heavy and filled with an unsettling certainty, an unwavering conviction. "You will witness soon enough, Adwoa," he said, his voice barely above a whisper now, a chilling promise. "The truth invariably confronts those who seek it, those who dig too deep. But when it does, when it finds you, be prepared. You will not be pleased with what you discover, not at all." With that final, ominous statement, he turned and walked away, his tall figure receding quickly into the deepening shadows of the trees at the village edge. Adwoa stood there, motionless, her mind racing, her heart pounding in her ears. The world she had known, the village she had cherished, the seemingly peaceful Kumasi Izin, was fundamentally transforming before her very eyes, revealing a hidden, darker reality. And as much as she detested it, as much as she wished, desperately, to avert her gaze, to flee back into the comforting illusion, she knew, with a chilling certainty, she could not. She was too deeply involved now, too entangled in their secrets. There was no possibility of retreat left open to her. She had to uncover the full truth, regardless of the sacrifice, regardless of the pain it might bring. The night that followed was unusually dark, moonless, as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath, watching. Adwoa sat on the edge of her sleeping mat, the weight of Kwame's chilling words still pressing heavily on her chest, suffocating her. His caution echoed incessantly in her mind. "You will witness soon enough, Adwoa. The truth invariably confronts those who seek it." She had been seeking answers, illumination, but now it felt as though the very ground beneath her was unstable, shifting unpredictably. The stillness of the night was interrupted only by the sporadic chirping of crickets outside her dwelling, a sound that normally brought comfort, but now felt eerie. She could not dispel the pervasive sensation that someone, or perhaps something unseen, was observing her, watching her every move, as though her very existence was being tracked, calculated. The thought sent a cold shiver down her spine, raising the hairs on her arms. The village felt too quiet now, unnaturally silent. The bustling thoroughfares she knew so well, the low murmur from the marketplace during the day, the innocent laughter of children playing, all of it seemed distant, muted, as if the world around her was receding into a dark void, leaving her isolated. Her mind repeatedly returned to one critical inquiry: what was the society truly pursuing? She had believed it was solely about power, about control over the village, a means for them to rule from the shadows, to enrich themselves. But Kwame's statements, his unsettling words, made her question if it was much more than that, something far bigger, far more sinister than she had ever conceived possible. Was something larger at play, some ancient purpose, a hidden legacy? Adwoa knew she had to find out the truth. She had to unveil it before it was too late, before she was forced into a choice she wasn't ready to make. The following morning, driven by an urgent need for understanding, she made her way to the village square where the ancient well stood, a silent witness to generations of village life. It had served as a gathering place for centuries, a spot where people convened to converse, to share news, to simply rest in the shade. Adwoa had often found solace there when she was younger, a place of comfort, but today it felt different, charged with an unseen tension. The usual hum of voices was absent, replaced by an uneasy, expectant silence. She spotted Nana Surwa seated under the shade of a large, gnarled tree by the well, her posture calm and centered. The old woman's presence always seemed calming, a quiet strength amidst the growing turmoil that enveloped Adwoa. Adwoa approached her slowly, her steps hesitant, uncertain of what words to use, but knowing she had to speak. Nana Surwa looked up, her sharp, knowing eyes scrutinizing her with a depth that suggested she already perceived what was weighing so heavily on Adwoa's mind and heart. "Nana Surwa," Adwoa said, her voice taut with urgency and fear. "I need to speak with you now." Nana Surwa motioned for her to be seated on the ground beside her, her expression unreadable, a mask of calm. "I am aware of what burdens you, child," she said softly, her voice gentle but firm. "You have been asking the incorrect inquiries, seeking answers in the wrong places." Adwoa sat down beside her instantly, her heart pounding with anticipation and a desperate hope that Nana Surwa held the key. "What do you mean, incorrect inquiries?" Adwoa pressed. "I must ascertain the truth, the whole truth. I must comprehend what is truly happening in this village, what Kwame meant." Nana Surwa's eyes softened for a moment, revealing a glimpse of the deep sadness she carried, a heaviness residing in her gaze like ancient stones. "The truth is a perilous entity, Adwoa," she explained, her voice low and filled with the weight of experience. "Some truths, perhaps, ought to remain concealed, buried deep. But I perceive, my child, that you will not desist, will you? You will not stop searching until you find it." "No," Adwoa replied, her voice firm, resolute. "I cannot desist now. Not when everything is disintegrating around me. Not when I am aware, truly aware, that the village I have known my entire life is not what I believed it to be, that it is living a lie." Nana Surwa sighed deeply, a sound like wind rustling through dry leaves, her weathered hands folded calmly in her lap. It is not solely the village, child, she explained, her voice a quiet murmur. It is the very bedrock of our existence here, the foundation upon which everything is built. Everything you see, everything you experience has been controlled, manipulated by forces that have been active for generations, for centuries perhaps. The society, as you have ascertained, is not merely about raw power, about control for its own sake. It is about legacy, about the preservation of a specific order, a cycle that has perpetuated itself for centuries unchanging. Adwoa's heart skipped a beat, a sudden, chilling realization dawning upon her. A cycle? She repeated, her voice barely a whisper. Nana Serwa nodded, a slow, deliberate confirmation. Yes, she said. The society, this collective that Kwame leads, they believe absolutely in the preservation of this order, their order. In their twisted perspective, the world, our village, cannot progress, cannot survive, unless certain conditions remain unaltered, unless things stay exactly as they are. They regulate the land, the vital resources, the flow of knowledge, the very lives of the people. They ensure that no individual, no group, ever rises above the others, ever accumulates too much power. They maintain equilibrium, their version of balance, in all aspects of village life. But why? Why keep it all hidden away in secret? Why not simply inform everyone, explain their purpose? Adwoa asked, struggling to understand the rationale behind such pervasive secrecy. Because power is akin to fire, Adwoa, Nana Serwa explained, her voice low and heavy with the weight of years of enforced silence and complicity. If you permit it to spread too extensively, to be understood by everyone, it will devour everything in its path, destroying the very thing you seek to control. They keep it concealed, hidden away, so that they, and only they, can govern it, so that no one can ever contest it, ever challenge their authority. Adwoa stared at her, striving to grasp the sheer enormity of what she was hearing, the depth of the deception. So, all this time the established order, the smooth functioning of the village, it is all part of their design, part of their plan? Yes, Nana Serwa said softly, her eyes filled with sorrow. And you, Adwoa, a simple girl, are now ensnared, caught right in the very midst of it. Mama Ngozi was aware of this. She knew the cycle. She attempted to resist, to break free, but she could not liberate herself from its grip. You have come close to the truth, but you have not yet perceived the complete panorama, the full picture of your involvement. Adwoa's mind raced frantically, desperately seeking clarification. What must I perceive, Nana Serwa? What am I missing? Nana Serwa's gaze hardened slightly, becoming more focused, more intense. You must perceive what they truly desire from you, Adwoa. What this entire sequence of events, this journey you've been on, has been building towards. You have been selected, Adwoa. Whether you comprehend it or not, you are a chosen one in their narrative. Selected? Adwoa repeated, her breath catching sharply in her throat, the word filling her with a sense of dread. For what purpose? For what trial? For the ultimate test, Nana Serwa stated, her voice unwavering. The trial that will ultimately determine whether the village remains as it is, trapped in its hidden cycle, or whether everything undergoes transformation, whether the truth sets it free or destroys it. A cold shiver ran down Adwoa's spine, a visceral reaction to the ominous weight of the words. The ultimate test. Nana Serwa's voice lowered to a whisper, filled with a profound sense of destiny. It is not solely about revealing the truth, Adwoa, about exposing their secrets. It is about your fundamental role in it all, the part you were born to play. The society has chosen you to be a part of their future, in one way or another. You are the one who will either validate their way of life, their control, or dismantle it completely. The choice, ultimately, will be yours and yours alone. Adwoa felt a nauseating sensation form in her stomach, her entire body feeling paralyzed, as though the world around her had ceased to move, frozen in anticipation. How could this be? She thought frantically. How could I, a simple girl, be involved in something so vast, so complex, so ominous? No, I will not be a part of it, Adwoa murmured, shaking her head vehemently, rejecting the terrifying notion. "You already are, Adwoa," Nana Serwa stated, her tone gentle but firm, unyielding. "It flows in your veins, child, a part of your very being. The trial is not something that can be eluded, not something you can run from. You were born into this cycle, and you must confront it head-on." Adwoa stood up abruptly, her legs unsteady beneath her, her mind reeling from the implications. I cannot be part of this hidden world. I will not permit them to control me, to dictate my path." Nana Serwa's wise old eyes followed her, sorrow filling her gaze, recognizing the struggle within Adwoa. "The choice is not solely yours to make, Adwoa, not entirely. But remember this, always. Regardless of your decision, regardless of the path you choose, you must be prepared. The truth, once awakened, will seek you out relentlessly. And when it does, when it stands before you, you must determine with courage where you stand. With them, in the shadows, or against them in the light." Adwoa's heart pounded heavily in her chest as she turned and walked away from Nana Serwa, the weight of the old woman's words pressing against her like a physical force. She had always considered herself an outsider, observing a village filled with history and quiet enigma. But now she comprehended the terrifying reality. She was at the very epicenter of it all, the focal point of an ancient, hidden conflict. And the most formidable phase, the ultimate test, was yet to commence. The trial, the choice, and the truth, all converging upon her. As she made her way back towards her dwelling, the sun fully set, she could not shake the profound feeling that something far more significant than herself was unfolding. A destiny she was entirely unaware of, its destination shrouded in darkness. But one fact was certain, one truth she held onto. She had no intention of yielding, no intention of being consumed by their cycle. The stakes were simply too high, the truth too vital. Adwoa was unable to sleep at all that night. Every time she closed her eyes, the weight of Nana Serwa's words, the terrifying choice presented by Kwame, pressed against her like an unyielding, suffocating force. The trial, the choice, the truth. They revolved incessantly in her mind like restless specters, refusing to grant her a moment's respite. She tossed and turned on her sleeping mat, her body aching from the tension that had settled deep within her bones, a physical manifestation of her inner turmoil. She had always believed the village to be a straightforward place, a simple community where life was lived transparently, where everyone knew one another's name and story, where every handshake and smile held genuine significance. But now it felt like a complex, dangerous labyrinth of secrets, its walls closing in on her, suffocating her with every breath she took, with every step she had taken down this path. And the more she uncovered, the more she realized that she was not solely fighting for herself, for her own freedom or safety. She was fighting for everyone in the village who remained oblivious to what was truly transpiring around them, trapped in an illusion they couldn't perceive. With the first light of dawn, a pale, gray light filtering through her window, she could no longer bear the stillness, the uncertainty. The village, with all its familiar paths and seemingly ordinary faces, had become a maze of uncertainty, a place where trust was a dangerous commodity. The place she had once called home now felt like a confinement, a prison, and the sole means of escape, she knew, was to continue moving forward, to confront the darkness head-on. She had to confront whatever this trial entailed directly, without hesitation. She had no alternative path left. By midday, the sun climbing high in the sky, casting down a warm, golden light that somehow rendered the entire village unreal, like a place from a dream, distant and indistinct, Adwoa found herself standing at the edge of the village square, her mind fixed solely on her next course of action. She took a deep breath, attempting to steady her nerves, to calm the frantic beating of her heart. If she was to confront Kwame again, if she was to ascertain the full truth behind the society, the legacy that had shaped this place, and her own unexpected role in it, she had to take the initial step. She had to seek him out. She walked directly to the village center, to the large, ancient tree that stood at its very core. It had been there, silently watching, for as long as anyone could possibly recollect, its massive trunk twisted and gnarled like a forgotten, ancient relic, a symbol of endurance. The elders often convened around it, conversing in hushed tones, imparting wisdom passed down through the generations, making quiet decisions that shaped village life. Adwoa had been there countless times before, seeking solace or shade, but today felt profoundly different, charged with impending conflict. As she approached the ancient tree, she observed, without surprise, that Kwame was already present, standing tall and solitary under its shade, waiting. His posture was relaxed, almost casual, as though he had been anticipating her arrival at this specific location, at this specific time. A small group of his followers, their faces impassive, were gathered nearby, their eyes fixed intently on her with quiet, unsettling curiosity. She walked towards him, endeavoring to suppress the wave of unease rising in her chest, to project an air of confidence she didn't entirely feel. Kwame's gaze met hers with an unsettling, calm composure. It was as if he knew precisely what she was going to articulate, knew precisely what resided in her heart, knew the decision she had wrestled with. "I am here for the truth, Kwame," Adwoa stated, her voice unwavering, stronger than before. "No more stratagems, no more riddles, no more secrets. I must know, definitively, what this society is truly about, what its purpose is, and what you desire from me, what this trial truly entails." Kwame's lips curved into a small, knowing smile, a smile that did not reach his cold eyes. "You have journeyed far, Adwoa, in your search for understanding," he said, his voice low and smooth. "I was certain you would. The truth, once stirred, possesses a way of summoning those who seek it, drawing them in." She folded her arms across her chest, standing tall despite the weight of the situation, despite her fear. "Then explain it to me, clearly," she demanded. "What is this society you lead? What does it desire from me, from this village?" Kwame's smile faded completely, his expression becoming serious, and he took a step closer to her, asserting his dominance. The other villagers who had been observing quietly from a distance seemed to instinctively distance themselves further, sensing the escalating tension between the two figures at the heart of the square. "The society, Adwoa, is the very bedrock, the unshakable foundation of this village," he began, his voice low, measured, authoritative. "It has existed for centuries, long before any of us were born or could conceive of this place. It governs everything within Kumasi Izan, the land, the vital resources, the families, the very rhythm of life. It is a system, ancient and enduring, that has maintained order, our order, in this village, even during its most arduous periods, its darkest times. Without it, this place would inevitably crumble into chaos, dissolve into anarchy. Equilibrium would be lost." Adwoa's eyes narrowed, a spark of defiance igniting within them. "And what role do I fulfill, then, in all of this? What part am I expected to play in your enduring system?" He paused, allowing the critical question to hang in the air for a long, pregnant moment before responding. "You, Adwoa, are the pivotal element in securing the society's future, in ensuring the cycle continues. The trial you confront is not merely about knowledge or understanding. It is about power, about who wields it. You are the one who possesses the capacity to either perpetuate the cycle of control or to disrupt it irrevocably. The choice, child, will be yours and yours alone to make." She clenched her fists at her sides, her heart pounding fiercely, the truth of his words hitting her with devastating force. "So," she said, her voice tight with emotion, "this entire situation, my life, was meticulously planned from the outset? I was never merely a villager, was I? I was part of some ancient test, some grand design." Kwame's eyes gleamed with a peculiar, unsettling blend of pride and something more ominous, more possessive. "Yes," he confirmed, his voice low and absolute. "From the moment of your birth, your path was, in a sense, predetermined. The society foresaw, through its ancient wisdom, that one day someone such as yourself would appear, someone who would possess the unexpected capacity, the spirit, to alter everything, to challenge the balance. And now you stand at the crossroads, at the very moment of that foreseen choice. "I do not covet your power," she retorted fiercely, rejecting his words. "I do not wish to be a part of your society, your cycle. I desire only to live a life liberated from these constraints, from this hidden control." Kwame's gaze hardened, his face becoming a mask of cold authority. "You may not desire it, Adwoa, but it resides within you, a potential you cannot deny. You cannot elude it, not now, not ever. You were chosen for this purpose, for this trial. And whether you embrace it or not, whether you fight it or not, the trial will inevitably confront you. It always does. It is the way of things." A hush, a palpable silence, descended over the small group of villagers standing nearby, their faces mirroring a mixture of fear, anticipation, and dawning comprehension. And for the first time, Adwoa realized, with startling clarity, that they were not merely spectators in this unfolding drama. They were participants as well, caught in the same web of hidden control. They were awaiting her decision. Just as she had been chosen, they were all anticipating the commencement of this ancient trial. Her breath quickened as the full, terrifying gravity of the situation impacted her. Kwame was correct about one aspect. There was no escaping it now. The trial had already commenced the moment she had opened Mama Ngozi's journal. "What will transpire if I decline?" Adwoa inquired, her voice tight with raw defiance, pushing back against his authority. Kwame's face remained impassive, revealing nothing. "Decline, refuse to choose, and the society will eliminate you, Adwoa. It is straightforward, a simple necessity. There is no room for defiance, for disruption, in a world that necessitates equilibrium, that demands order. The society adheres to its regulations, its ancient laws, and if you do not conform, if you attempt to break the cycle, you will be expunged, removed from the equation." Her heart constricted painfully in her chest. It was the same brutal ultimatum Nana Surwa had cautioned her about, the grim reality of challenging their power. She could not afford to decline, she knew. She had to discover a means to navigate this trial, to fight without sacrificing everything she held dear, everything she believed in. The silence stretched between them, thick and oppressive, charged with unspoken threats and the weight of centuries of control. She looked around at the villagers gathered, all of them waiting, watching, their faces a mixture of fear and hope. And for the first time, she recognized that they were not merely passive onlookers in this system. They were all components of a system that had been constructed upon secrets, upon falsehoods, upon sacrifices, upon fear. But she was not going to become one of them, not in the way Kwame intended. She was not going to permit their trial, their system, to consume her entirely, to extinguish the light Mama Ngozi had urged her to protect. "I will not be a pawn in your scheme, Kwame," she declared, her voice strong, unwavering, echoing through the square. "I will fight. I will contend with every fiber of my being, with every ounce of strength I possess." For a brief instant, a fleeting moment, Kwame's eyes flickered with something, perhaps respect for her unexpected courage, or perhaps amusement at her perceived folly. "Very well," he said softly, his lips curving into a thin, cold smile. "Let the trial commence. Let the path unfold." And with those words, the world seemed to shift subtly around them, the air vibrating with a new energy. The path ahead was uncertain, shrouded in mystery and danger, but one fact was undeniable. The game had begun, the trial was underway, and there was no possibility of retreat left for Adwoa or for the village itself. The days following Kwame's chilling pronouncement felt like a protracted, suffocating progression, each moment seeming to extend indefinitely, as if time itself had been suspended within a tangled web of uncertainty and fear. Adwoa could not shake the sensation that the invisible walls were closing in on her, that her every action, every thought, was being observed, calculated, anticipated by the society. She had made her decision, the choice to fight, but she remained unsure of the subsequent step, unsure of how to proceed against such a pervasive, unseen force. She knew only one thing with certainty. She could not yield. She could not give up the truth she had uncovered. The villagers had begun to behave differently around her, their usual easy familiarity replaced by apprehension. Some avoided her gaze completely when she passed by on the paths. Others whispered in hushed, fearful tones whenever she was nearby, their words silenced abruptly if she looked their way. It was as though they possessed a knowledge she lacked, a horrifying understanding of the path she had chosen, as if they could perceive through her, see the mark of the trial upon her, as if she had become an outsider, a pariah, in the very place she had called home for so long. The burden of their fearful silence pressed down on her, heavy and isolating. But she refused to permit it to break her spirit, to extinguish the light. She spent lengthy hours traversing the village, walking its familiar paths lost in her own thoughts, endeavoring desperately to discern her next course of action, to find a way to fight back. Each time she passed the ancient well in the village square, the heart of the community, she could feel the intangible gaze of the society upon her, watching, waiting, as though invisible hands were reaching out from the shadows to grasp her, to pull her back into their control. Her every movement was under surveillance, she was convinced of it, and the truth, the complete, powerful truth she needed to fight them, she was still so very far from fully grasping it. One evening, as the sun had dipped low once more, casting a soft, melancholy pink glow over the village, painting the sky in fading colors, Adwoa felt drawn to the ancient tree by the square, the same location where she had first encountered Kwame face to face. But this time, as she approached, she was not alone. Nana Surwa was seated there, patiently awaiting her, her old, wrinkled face lined with years of secrets, of hidden knowledge, and a quiet, enduring wisdom. "You are not alone in this struggle, Adwoa," Nana Surwa said softly as soon as Adwoa sat beside her on the rough ground, her voice steady but imbued with a quiet sadness that reflected the difficulty of the path ahead. Adwoa turned to regard her aunt, seeking reassurance. "I understand, Aunt Nana, in my mind," she replied, her voice filled with the weight of her isolation, "but it feels that way. I no longer know whom to trust, whom to turn to for guidance. Every individual I believed I knew, believed I could rely upon, seems to be a participant in this hidden game, this ancient system." Nana Surwa nodded slowly, a gesture of understanding and shared burden. "It is a heavy burden indeed, child, to carry the weight of such a truth alone. But you must recall, Adwoa, not all of us in this village are truly aligned with the society's design, with their control. Some of us are merely endeavoring, day by day, to survive, to navigate the unseen currents of power. We have been caught in this web, this cycle, just as much as you, for generations." "Survival," Adwoa echoed, the word tasting bitter in her mouth. "How long has this been ongoing, Aunt Nana? How many lives have been devastated, crushed because of this society's need for order?" "Too many, my child," Nana Surwa said softly, her voice filled with a profound, ancient sorrow. "Far too many. But the essential point, the critical truth you must grasp, is that they, the members of the society, do not perceive it in that manner. To them, it is about equilibrium, about balance, about the greater good of maintaining their system. The system, their version of order, must endure at all costs. There is no latitude for chaos, for transformation, for individual defiance. And anyone who jeopardizes that equilibrium, anyone who challenges their control, well, you are aware of what ultimately transpires." "Expunged," Adwoa whispered, the word a cold stone in her mouth, remembering Kwame's chilling threat. "Yes," Nana Surwa confirmed, her voice grave. "But it is not predestined to conclude in that manner, not necessarily. There is always an alternative path, a possibility for change, provided you are willing to contend fiercely for it, to fight against the perceived destiny." Adwoa looked up at the ancient tree, its thick, gnarled branches extending towards the darkening sky, a silent witness to centuries of village life and hidden power. She felt a glimmer of hope, faint but persistent, like a diminutive ember glowing amidst the pervasive darkness that surrounded her, that threatened to extinguish her. Could she genuinely oppose this ancient force? Could she truly disrupt the cycle, break free from the predetermined path? Or had she already become too deeply immersed, too irrevocably entangled? I am unsure if I am truly prepared for this daunting task, she admitted softly, her voice barely audible, the fear still present. Nana Surwa turned to her then, her wise old eyes filled with deep comprehension and unexpected strength. None of us, Adwoa, are ever truly prepared, she said gently. Life rarely grants us the luxury of feeling completely ready for the challenges it presents. But sometimes, my child, life affords us no alternative path. We must simply step forward, take that terrifying step, even when the path ahead is obscure, even when we cannot see the destination. The old woman's words lingered in the air between them, a quiet, powerful reassurance, as they both sat in silence, observing the sun descend below the horizon, casting long, deep shadows over the village. Adwoa felt the full, heavy weight of her forthcoming decision, the path she had chosen, pressing on her chest. But with that weight came a strange sort of clarity, a dawning realization. This was no longer solely about her own personal struggle, her own safety or fear. It was not merely about the society and its hidden control. It was about the individuals she cared for, the people of this village, those who remained unaware of what was truly transpiring in the shadows, those who were living a lie. And at that exact moment, sitting beside her wise old aunt, it occurred to her with sudden, undeniable force. She did not have to face this alone, isolated against the darkness. If she was to dismantle the society, if she was to break the cycle, she needed to assemble allies, individuals who were not involved in the system, people who, like her, yearned for truth and freedom, people who could assist her in standing against Kwame and his adherents. The following day, fueled by this new understanding and a sense of purpose, she commenced reaching out tentatively to those she trusted most, those she believed were not entangled in the society's web. Nana Surwa was correct. There were some who had no direct involvement in the society's machinations, some who simply desired peace and honesty. She initiated contact with a few of the village's more respected elders who had consistently demonstrated kindness towards her throughout her young life, those who had never truly forsaken her, even in her orphaned state. They were hesitant initially, fearful of the repercussions, but as she conversed with them, speaking the truth openly, explaining the darkness that had slowly, insidiously, infiltrated their lives and the future it threatened, they too began to perceive it, to understand the urgency. Gradually, slowly, a small contingent of villagers began to coalesce, drawn together by a shared objective, by a quiet defiance. They shared the same aspiration, to reclaim their village from the society's pervasive grip, to bring light to the shadows. They possessed little in the way of worldly power or influence, but they had hope, a fragile but potent force. And in a place where hope had been all but extinguished for generations, that was sufficient, more than sufficient. It was not long before Kwame, with his omnipresent eyes and ears, detected the subtle but significant shift in the village's atmosphere. The whispers intensified, growing louder, more confident, and the undercurrent of defiance, however quiet, grew stronger, more determined. And one evening, as Adwoa stood alone in the center of the village square, observing the vibrant sunset painting the sky, a moment of quiet reflection, she saw him approaching from the edge of the square. Kwame advanced towards her with his customary calm, measured demeanor, his eyes fixed intently on hers across the open space. "I observe you have been active, Adwoa," he said, his voice low, but laced with a palpable hint of warning, of simmering danger. "You have been gathering support. But you should understand that this path will culminate poorly for you, child. It will not end as you envision." Adwoa held her ground, standing tall, the small but growing gathering of villagers who had come to support her sensing the escalating tension, the impending confrontation. "I am finished with being a participant in your game, Kwame," she declared, her voice steady, unwavering, filled with a newfound strength. This village belongs to the people who live and work here, to its history, not to you or your society, not to your hidden control. Kwame smiled then, a chilling, predatory smile, but there was no warmth or genuine amusement in it, only cold calculation. You believe you can alter things, Adwoa, he scoffed, his voice as frigid as stone, yet a trace of amusement, of disbelief, still lingered within it. You believe you can dismantle centuries of order, of established control, with a handful of fearful villagers? The society's roots extend far deeper, far wider than you realize. Your endeavor is futile, a foolish act of defiance. But Adwoa stood firm, her gaze meeting his directly. I am not seeking to undo everything, Kwame, she retorted, her voice gaining strength, echoing in the sudden silence of the square. We are seeking to restore what this village was intended to be from the beginning. Honest, transparent, free from fear. You and your society have transformed it into something else, something dark. You have perverted it into a cage, controlled by shadows. Kwame's lips curved into a smile that felt more like a sneer, a mask of contempt. You are delusional, girl. You believe the villagers will truly stand by you when the pressure comes? They have been conditioned to obey, taught over generations that there is no existence, no safety, outside of the society's dominion. You will find yourself isolated, alone in your foolish defiance, Adwoa. No, Kwame, she retorted, her voice unwavering, carrying the weight of her growing support. You will be isolated. You have disregarded the populace, their will, their spirit. You have forgotten those who built this place with their hands, those who have resided here, labored here, and sacrificed here for generations. They embody the true spirit of the village, the real enduring power, not you or your society. The words hung in the air for a moment, imbued with a power, a resonant truth, that neither of them could deny. The crowd behind Adwoa, previously silent and hesitant, began to murmur, their whispers spreading like wildfire, a growing wave of agreement and support. It was now undeniably evident that the villagers were not merely passive observers in this conflict. They were the ones who possessed the genuine power, the power to decide their own future. Kwame seemed to sense the fundamental shift in the atmosphere, the balance tipping away from him. His posture stiffened noticeably, and for the first time, a flicker of genuine uncertainty, of doubt, appeared in his eyes, but it was transient, quickly suppressed. With a deep breath, he regained his composure, the facade of control descending back into place, but it felt less convincing now. You have swayed them, have you not? He stated, his voice suddenly softer, colder, laced with a chilling threat. You have given them a false hope. But you overlook one essential fact, Adwoa, the fundamental law of our world. Authority, true power, is never truly bestowed or given freely. It is seized, it is taken by force or manipulation. And if you believe you can withdraw from this confrontation, from this trial, without dire repercussions, without a heavy cost, you are profoundly mistaken. Adwoa took a step forward, her heart pounding in her chest, but her resolve stronger than ever, fueled by the growing support around her. I am not afraid of you, Kwame, she stated, her voice firm and clear. Not any longer. If we must fight for this village's future, for its truth, then that is precisely what we shall do, together. The villagers, previously hesitant and fearful, now stood taller, straighter, their faces etched with a mixture of apprehension and unwavering determination. They had always intuited that something was deeply amiss in their village, that a hidden force controlled their lives, but they had never possessed the courage, the catalyst, to articulate it, to challenge it openly. Now, with Adwoa leading them, speaking the truth they dared not voice, they rediscovered their collective strength, their shared spirit. Kwame's expression darkened considerably, becoming dangerous, and in that moment, Adwoa comprehended the true magnitude of his power, the depth of his commitment to the society. He was not merely a leader. He was the embodiment of the society itself, its will, its enduring power. And if he was willing to fight to the bitter end to preserve it, to maintain his control, then she and the villagers who stood with her would have to confront him directly, challenging not just a man, but an ancient system. "You will lament this day, Adwoa," he warned, his voice now tinged with a cold, dangerous edge, a promise of future retribution. "The society predates you. It has endured for centuries. It will endure, and so shall I." He turned slightly to address the group of followers who had been standing silently behind him, their eyes flickering with uncertainty, with a dawning realization of the shift in power. He gave them a single, curt nod, a silent command, and in that instant, they moved, encircling the growing group of defiant villagers, their eyes narrowed, awaiting any indication of weakness, any opportunity to strike. But Adwoa felt no fear, not in that moment. She recognized, instinctively, that the battle they faced was not one of physical force or weaponry alone. It was a battle of spirits, of courage, of collective will against pervasive fear. As long as the people stood united, stood together in their demand for truth and freedom, they could surmount anything, even the ancient power of the society. "You are mistaken, Kwame," she stated, her voice ringing out, carrying through the square, reaching every ear. "The society may be ancient, but it is constructed upon falsehoods, built on a foundation of secrets and fear. And falsehoods, inevitably, invariably collapse when exposed to the light of truth." The sound of her words, her unwavering conviction, resonated powerfully through the crowd, igniting something deep within the hearts of the villagers, a spark of long-suppressed hope. One by one, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence, they stepped forward, joining her in standing against Kwame and the society he represented. Their collective strength, their unified presence, became a formidable force, a wall of defiance that Kwame could no longer simply disregard or dismiss. "You believe your minor insurrection, your foolish rebellion, can withstand everything I have constructed, everything the society represents." Kwame spat, his voice filled with contempt, but there was less conviction in it now, a subtle fissure forming in his formidable defense. "It is not an insurrection, Kwame," Adwoa declared, her voice strong and clear, speaking not just for herself, but for everyone present. "It is a revolution. The truth has always possessed greater power than lies, greater strength than fear, and we are finished concealing ourselves from it, finished living in the shadows you have created." The village square, once a place of quiet exchanges, of simple gatherings and traditions, had become the battleground for a future that would either be governed perpetually by fear and hidden secrets or founded upon honesty, courage, and hope. Adwoa had made her allegiance clear, and with every step she took, the villagers took one alongside her, standing united. For the first time, the weight of the society's power, the burden it had imposed, felt as though it was shifting, cracking under the pressure of something far more potent: truth and unity. Kwame's gaze swept over the determined crowd, searching desperately for any sign of doubt, any hint of retreat in their faces. But the villagers maintained their stance, resolute, unyielding. They were no longer afraid, not in the face of their collective strength. With a final, venomous glare directed at Adwoa, a look filled with promised retribution, Kwame turned abruptly and departed, his followers trailing uncertainly behind him, their faces reflecting confusion and doubt, unsure of what the future held for their society. The society, it seemed, was not invincible after all. Its foundation, built on fear and secrecy, had been shaken. Adwoa watched them leave, her heart pounding in her chest, but a profound sense of triumph, a quiet victory, filled the air of the square. She had succeeded, not in destroying the society, but in exposing its hidden nature, in igniting a spark of defiance. The battle was far from concluded, she knew, the path ahead still uncertain and dangerous, but this marked the turning point, the moment when the truth had emerged from the shadows. The village, her home, was no longer entirely constrained by the society's hidden hold. The truth was exposed, and the villagers, finally awakened, had elected their own future, a future they would now fight for. As the sun finally dipped below the horizon, casting a warm, golden light over the square, illuminating the faces of the people who stood with her, Adwoa stood surrounded by the community she had championed. The world stretching before them was still filled with uncertainty, with challenges ahead. But for the first time in a considerable while, since Mama Ngozi had shared her secret, hope permeated the air, a palpable force. And with that hope came the powerful realization that the future of Kumasi Izin could be whatever they, together, collectively, resolved to shape it into, a future built not on secrets, but on courage and truth.